So let's talk about workplace culture. We hear that term all the time, right? But what if I told you we're almost always looking for it in the wrong places? We're about to dive into what really, truly builds or, completely breaks the culture of any team.
This right here, this is the whole idea in a nutshell. It's not about the fancy mission statement hanging on the wall or the values you see on a website. Culture is so much more immediate, so much more human than that. It's a living, breathing thing that gets built every single day.
And this slide just breaks it down perfectly. On the left, you've got the stuff we often think is culture, the mission statements, the posters, the slogans. But the reality? The real culture lives in those small, everyday moments you see on the right. It's the tone of voice in a daily conversation. It's how feedback actually lands. And it's what happens when the team has a disagreement. Those are the real building blocks.
Okay, so if culture is all about relationships, we need to get clear on what we're actually talking about. When we say workplace relationships, what does that even mean? Because it's a way bigger and, honestly, more critical concept than most of us think.
Here's our core definition, and the key word here is patterns. It's about how we consistently interact with each other. And notice, this is not about being best friends with your coworkers. It's about the professional dynamics that exist between everyone every single day. And yeah, these relationships come in a lot of different flavors. You've got the dynamic with your manager, which basically sets the tone for your psychological safety. You've got how you work with your peers, which defines teamwork. And then there are those informal networks. The people everyone really goes to for advice. That's a massive part of the cultural landscape too.
Which brings up a really great question. Why do we interact the way we do? It's not random. We all bring our own sort of unwritten rule book with us to work every day. So where does that come from?
And here's the answer. This is such a critical insight. None of us walks in the door as a blank slate. Our past experiences with bosses, good and bad, the teams we've been on, even our upbringing, it all shapes what we expect from communication, from authority, from trust. We are literally carrying our entire history into every single interaction at work. So now that we get what these relationships are and where they come from, let's break down what makes them strong. Turns out, there are pretty much 3 foundational pillars that support every single healthy, high-performing team. First up, communication. And listen, this is so much more than just firing off an email or talking in a meeting. We're talking about the quality of that exchange. Is the tone respectful? Is the timing right? Are you actually listening? Or are you just waiting for your turn to talk? That's the real stuff. Next, pillar number 2, trust and respect. Now, they're linked for sure, but they're not the same thing. Trust, that comes from reliability. It's knowing you can count on someone to do what they say they're going to do. Respect, on the other hand, is about valuing someone's ideas and their point of view, even when you don't agree. And the secret ingredient for both? Consistency.
And finally, how a team handles conflict. A lot of people think conflict is a sign of a bad culture, but honestly, it's usually the opposite. Avoiding conflict is way more toxic. A team that can work through a disagreement constructively doesn't just solve a problem, it actually makes its relationships even stronger.
All right, so these pillars sound good, right? But how does all this soft stuff actually connect to what leaders really care about? Performance, hitting deadlines, getting results. Well, let's connect those dots.
And boom, this slide just lays it all out. On the surface, what everyone sees are the metrics, the deadlines, the sales numbers. But underneath all of that, propping it all up, are those invisible relational dynamics. You simply cannot have great performance if you don't have things like psychological safety and team cohesion. The invisible stuff is what drives the visible stuff, every time.
This is a huge deal for any leader to understand. If you start to see performance dip or engagement just seems to fall off a cliff, your first instinct might be to check the project plan or fix the process. But I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, the real problem is a breakdown in relationships.
So what can you actually do? Well, first, start paying attention to how things are getting done, not just what's getting done. Second, remember that your team has its own little microculture, and that's where you have the most influence. And third, you have to accept that building healthy relationships doesn't just happen by accident. It takes real focus and deliberate effort.
So let's bring this all home. Because this isn't just a memo for managers and leaders. Every single one of us plays a part in the culture we experience every day.
Oh, I love this metaphor. It just reframes the whole conversation, doesn't it? Relationships aren't some nice-to-have soft skill. No way. They are the fundamental operating system that everything else runs on. And if that OS is buggy, nothing is going to work right.
And that really leaves us with some big questions to think about.
I mean, think about your day so far. The meetings you were in, the chats you had. How did those tiny little interactions add up to create the environment around you?
And what about all that history we talked about? What are the biases and expectations that you bring to the table without even realizing it? Just understanding our own patterns is the very first step to having better interactions with everyone else.
And that's really the final takeaway here. Culture isn't some top-down thing that's handed to you. It's a bottom-up reality that you are actively creating every day, in every single conversation, every email, and every meeting. We are all the architects of our own culture. The only question is, what are we choosing to build?